Most of you are no stranger to fan-made Pokemon games. I want to take a deep dive into the history of certain fan-made Pokemon games that were targeted by Nintendo or the Pokemon Company. Not only will I take a look at the events of their takedown, but also the aftermath of these events and what the developers are doing nowadays. For those unaware, fan games infringe on copyrighted material, for example, names of Pokemon, designs, game mechanics, soundtracks. Unsurprisingly, the Pokemon community often reacts very negatively to these takedowns. The majority criticizes Nintendo and the Pokemon Company for being too aggressive in shutting down fan projects, with the argument that these fan games are made out of love for the Pokemon franchise. It is worth noting that some developers try to make a profit from the Pokemon IP, which I personally do not condone. There is a fraction of the community that is understanding of Nintendo's legal actions. They are just trying to protect their IP. Though, as I said earlier, a significant majority of these fan projects make no profit and do nothing wrong or harmful to the Pokemon brand in the end. Let's start by looking at Pokemon Uranium first, a fan game that was made with the RPG Maker engine by users named JV and Involuntary Twitch. You might also know it as the banned Pokemon game, a nickname it has received thanks to the Pokétuber community. Pokemon Uranium was built from the ground up. It showcased an entirely new region called Tandor and included unique story elements like nuclear reactors and how these influenced the wild Pokemon around them. Uranium also had over 150 Fakemon that were supported by a few already existing Pokemon. It was released on August 6, 2016, after 9 years of development since 2007. August 2016 was a whirlwind of events, so fasten your seatbelts. In October 2016, Involuntary Twitch made a blog post sharing his reflections on the events. The surge in popularity stemmed from several factors. The summer of 2016 was an amazing period for Pokemon, with the release of Pokemon Go igniting excitement among both old and new fans to unprecedented levels. Additionally, Pokemon Sun and Moon were on the horizon. A lot of people were already itching to get into a new Pokemon experience months before the new mainline games hit the shelves. Uranium just happened to arrive at the perfect moment. On the day of its release, the game quickly reached the top of the subreddits r/Pokemon and r/all. This drew the attention of gaming news outlets to write articles about the game, pushing it even further into the mainstream audience. Within a week, Pokemon Uranium transformed from a relatively unknown indie game into something that surpassed even the upcoming Pokemon games in search results. 1 week after the game was released, Involuntary Twitch received an email notifying the Uranium team that one of their uploads from an external host had been removed by Nintendo of America. This prompted the Uranium team to remove the game's download from their website, although they assured users that updates and news would continue to be provided. The team believed this action would suffice to honor Nintendo's wishes, but unfortunately that was not the case. A few weeks later, on September 1st, Involuntary Twitch received a letter at his front doorstep from Nintendo of America. This letter demanded an immediate halt to all web operations, game development, and ad revenue generation, threatening legal action against him and the Uranium team for copyright infringement. On the same day, Involuntary Twitch shared the message with his team and took swift action. Luckily, this didn't mean the end for Pokemon Uranium. The game was picked up by a separate group independent from the original team on September 21st in 2016 and has continued developing the game since. The Pokemon Uranium community thrived, giving rise to a new website, Discord server, subreddit, and an extensive wiki. The game has received an update recently. Part 1 of Uranium's expanded post-game. The previous update was released in March 2021, so there was a long hiatus in between these two updates. Pokemon Uranium still sees online play relatively frequently. You can even follow the statistics on their official website. The current devs have done a great job so far with the new content in-game, and I'm personally looking forward to seeing cut content being added, like the Sea Monster trio mentioned on the wiki. Transitioning to the developer's current endeavors, I have some good news. GV and Involuntary Twitch are actively working on a second fan game titled Pokemon Flux. It's being released in episodes or multiple parts, in other words. I haven't personally played it myself, but just looking at the new features, it seems like it will be even bigger in scope than Pokemon Uranium. There is only one episode out right now, but it is definitely shaping to be more than a worthy successor. The developers themselves seem to be doing very well these days. Involuntary Twitch made an AMA post on Uranium's first year anniversary, and he was very glad to see that the project got picked up by a new team. In his blog post I mentioned earlier, he writes about how much the explosion in popularity and Nintendo's actions took a toll on his body and mental health. He was at the lowest point in his life, but with the support of friends, family, and the Uranium team, he gradually improved. Moreover, Pokemon Uranium has helped both him and JV in securing new job opportunities. There is very limited information on how JV is doing, besides helping with the development on Pokemon Flux. Before I move on to the next game, I also have a fun fact, unrelated to the development of the game. Pokemon Uranium was nominated for the Game Awards in 2016 in the Best Fan Creation category, alongside the Metroid fan game AM2R, which also had its history with Nintendo. Both of these games got removed from the nominations. Jeff Keighley, the host of the Game Awards, later said during a live stream that Nintendo was one of the sponsors of his show, and they wanted those two games removed. He was forced to comply and said in his live stream he was disappointed about this situation. Alright, shifting gears to something else. These are not necessarily fan games, but rather mods. For Minecraft, we have Pixelmon, and for Roblox, Pokemon Brick Bronze and Project Pokemon. I'm gonna assume that the majority of you know what Roblox and Minecraft is, so I won't delve too deep into these specifics. They are comparable to MMOs, where you can run around and interact with other players in online 3D environments. All three mods I mentioned profited from the Pokemon IP through microtransactions and ads, leading to their eventual shutdown. Let's tackle Pokemon Brick Bronze first. This mod featured a custom-made storyline that took place in the Roria region, with the end goal, of course, becoming champion. It was crafted by Lando64000 and his team. Lando himself already had a few years of experience under his belt making other games in Roblox. Pokemon Brick Bronze went live on October 24, 2015 and quickly became the most popular way to experience a Pokemon adventure on Roblox. Maybe even the most popular way to experience an online Pokemon adventure in general. The game stayed online for a surprisingly long time, before getting a DMCA strike from Nintendo. The downfall only happened on April 18 in 2018, so the game was live for 2 years and a half. Brick Bronze used assets that came straight from the mainline games Pokemon X and Y. On top of using the Pokemon Company's assets, they were also making a profit in the form of microtransactions. Players who spent money on Brick Bronze were absolutely not pleased, with some of them seeking refunds. Fast forward to 2017, the game itself got leaked by a Roblox security breach. From then on, re-uploads of Pokemon Brick Bronze happen on a weekly or even daily occasion. Despite the efforts of Roblox terminating accounts and the original Brick Bronze team deleting images and other assets, the re-uploads haven't slowed down one bit. Some of the re-uploads use third-party backups to transfer user data to new copies of the game, so players don't have to start over their adventure after each takedown. Lando64000 is still creating other Roblox experiences to this day and even has his own monster-catching game titled Lumion Legacy that released on July 20, 2019. I read that his new game still retains some assets from Pokemon Brick Bronze, which would be very ironic. So I hope for him that has changed by now. It's also facing tough competition from Doodle World, another monster-catching game made by the developers behind Project Pokémon, the very competition Brick Bronze faced before Nintendo interfered. Speaking of Project Pokémon, it launched on April 10, 2013, which means it predated Brick Bronze. Despite their similar history in terms of how they were run, Project Pokémon lingered longer than its competition. 4 months after Brick Bronze got shut down, Project Pokémon also got the axe on August 4, 2018. The mod was created by WishZ, who also developed the previously mentioned Doodle World. Before that game, he also made another monster collecting game named Hero Havoc. Both games still receive updates to this day, but only Doodle World sees regular play by nearly 1000 players. Now for Pixelmon. The Minecraft mod also caught Nintendo's eye and was shut down on July 14, 2017, though it didn't take very long for it to get revived under the name Pixelmon Reforged. Subsequently, on May 29, 2022, Pixelmon Generations released and is often compared to Pixelmon Reforged. Both mods continue to attract a large player base, with Generations receiving more frequent but smaller updates, while Reforged undergoes larger updates that require more time to release. I almost didn't want to mention Pixelmon in this video, since the takedown request they got seemed like such a non-issue in the end. Now, let's dive into some recent takedowns that unfolded not too long ago. On June 7, 2021, the official threads of specific ROM hacks unexpectedly disappeared from Pokécommunity.com. The affected ROM hacks include Pokemon Flora Sky, Giratina Strikes Back, Glazed, and Stranded. The first 3 have completed their development and are no longer receiving updates. They are also quite old at this point in time. Pokemon Stranded, on the other hand, is still fairly new and is basically still in beta. The admins of the website remain tight-lipped, even asking in their notification about the event not to contact them for any questions. I could only find one thread addressing the situation on the website, with one user saying that they know an admin. According to this user, the admins believe the takedown request originated from Nintendo. We don't know what Nintendo's intentions were, but their message to the admins must have been very serious, because even to this day, discussions about these 4 ROM hacks remain off limits. It's so sad to see that their official threads and discussions are gone, but they can still be accessed through the Wayback Machine. If you have the patience to use it, that is. ROM hacks always get hosted as pre-patched versions on various websites on the same day they get released, so the games themselves aren't lost to time. I do wonder what the developers are doing after the success of their ROM hacks. Pokemon Flora Sky has gotten some sort of remaster in the form of Flora Sky Rebirth, which is made by a different developer. I think they are named Sosilumi, but I'm not sure. Both games aren't held in high regard because of their horrible difficulty balancing. It seems to me the only people liking these games nowadays are nostalgic for it. The developer of the original Flora Sky, Sky Hippowdon, or Sky for short, seems to have disappeared from the internet, or at least under this nickname. He has a YouTube channel that hasn't received any uploads in over 10 years. According to the official Flora Sky website, Sky is or was associated with a group called Pokemega, but their website is just a blank page, and there doesn't seem to be more information about them. I guess that's all I can say about this guy. Details about the developer of the Rebirth version are almost non-existent. Their Pokécommunity profile hasn't been active since May 2019, and I wasn't able to find any other socials. The development of Pokemon Giratina Strikes Back is kind of vague. It was created by a user named Slew. I could only find a Pokécommunity profile, but nothing else. He hasn't been active since September 2023. I did find out he also released a ROM hack named Pokemon Fulgin in April 2012, which seems to be well received by players. Pokemon Glazed was originally made by Luke Bowie, but it got picked up by Trainer X493, who developed it up until version 9.1. Just like Pokemon Flora Sky, Pokemon Glazed also has an alternate version developed by a different user. Pokemon Blazed Glazed, developed by Chudo, is supposed to be an improvement over Glazed, but it's based on a version that's quite old, so it's missing certain things from later updates in Glazed. There has been discussion online what the best version is between Glazed and Blazed Glazed, since Glazed received updates after Blazed Glazed stopped getting them. The developers don't seem to be active in the ROM hacking community anymore. Pokemon Stranded is still a fairly recent ROM hack, created by a user named Entaro Seraphanen, who is still actively updating it. A few Poketubers have already made videos about this ROM hack, before it got targeted by Nintendo. Its popularity might be the reason why, but then again, there are many other ROM hacks that get a lot of mainstream attention and nothing happens to them. You should definitely try out Pokemon Stranded. Its concept and gameplay loop is very unique compared to other hacks. Pokemon Prism is a ROM hack of Pokemon Crystal. It spent 9 years in development and was supposed to launch on Christmas 2016. This game boasts a brand new region, storyline, 2 new types, unique gameplay mechanics, Pokemon introduced beyond Gen 2, and a lot more. Pokemon Prism is an unofficial sequel to Pokemon Brown. Both were developed by a user named Coolboyman. Prism received a lot of praise, even before its release, and this caused it to catch the eye of the mainstream audience. Of course, its popularity prompted Nintendo to issue a cease and desist order in December 2016, shortly before Prism was meant to release. I guess that was their Christmas present to Coolboyman? Anyways, in response, Coolboyman shut down his whole website that also hosted his other ROM hacks, Pokemon Brown and Region Adventures. This caused the official downloads of these two to be temporarily unavailable. Shortly after the website shut down, an anonymous user on 4chan leaked an unfinished version of Pokemon Prism in the same month. In the aftermath, Coolboyman made the decision to step back from development, passing the reins to a new team known as Rainbow Devs, who also took over hosting his other ROM hacks. Since then, Pokemon Prism has seen ongoing development under their supervision, with the latest version 0.95 having been released in July 2023. It's relieving to see that the game will see a completed release one day. As for Coolboyman, he shifted his focus to a new project outside the Pokemon universe. He has teased a game named Wu Xing in the past, although it's been a few years since the last update. Right now, he seems to be focused on releasing a cartoon pilot. He is quite active on social media, especially on Reddit and Twitter/X, where he occasionally shares insights into his life, his thoughts, and various other topics. I am particularly intrigued by Coolboyman's posts, where he talks about the development of Pokemon Prism and its impact on his life thereafter. He is the only developer in this video that got to speak to Nintendo employees after the takedown of his game. In a post titled Prism and My Life 1 Year Later, he made a pretty insightful statement. I fully understand why they had to give Prism a cease and desist, as they viewed it as potential competition between their official products, which I also take as a compliment, and I have no hard feelings towards them about it anymore. The matter was fully resolved back in February, and they thanked me for my cooperation. Nintendo is a good company, and I ask that you continue to support them. I had the opportunity to talk to a couple of their employees this year in person who know what went down, and they are good people. In that same post, Coolboyman also reveals his battles with depression and anxiety. He emphasizes the importance of prioritizing self-care and seeking professional help, underscoring that he, too, endured these struggles for too long before finally seeking help. Looking through Coolboyman's Twitter posts, it appears he's doing slightly better these days. For years, Pokémon fans have been begging for a Pokémon game that would enable you to play online with other players, similarly to a MMORPG. Quite a few fan-made projects have spawned over the years. Players like to call them Pokémon MMOs or Poké-MMOs for short. These games play like traditional Pokémon titles with sprite-based graphics and the usual online functionalities, like trading and battling other trainers. A Pokémon MMO goes a few steps further, enabling players to chat and run around with each other in real time, just like an MMO. Pixelmon and custom Roblox servers are similar in concept, but Pokémon MMOs typically play out in the 2D regions we've come to know and love. As far as I could find, there are two Pokémon MMOs that fell victim to Nintendo's takedown notices: Pokénet and Pokémon Unova RPG Online. Pokénet started development in January 2009 by former members of Pokémon Global and Pokémon Revolution Online. A user named Shadow Kanji started the development on Pokénet and the team quickly grew from then on. Pokénet was still in beta and only had Kanto and Johto as explorable regions before it got taken down. The game had quite a few players. One of the developers, Lucia, stated that over 7,000 players logged in during the game's lifespan. Nintendo sent them a takedown request in March 2010, but the team behind Pokénet waited to take action until April Fools, nearly a whole month after the takedown request. And no, that's not a joke. The dev team theorized that Nintendo targeted them because their game was open source, something that other Poké-MMOs weren't at the time. They also didn't earn any money from the project and paid out of pocket to keep the servers running. I read that the download they provided contained a ROM of a Pokémon game, so it might as well be because of that. Since their game was open source, anyone could use it to develop their own Pokémon MMO. Fast forward to May 2012, the Pokénet project was revived as Pokémonium by a new team of developers. However, due to technical challenges and Pokénet's flawed source code, it became too much for the new developers to keep development for the game ongoing. The source code of Pokémonium was made open source in October 2013, but the official link doesn't seem to be available anymore nowadays. The legacy of Pokénet does live on through community gatherings where former developers and players play party games and celebrate Pokénet's history. This group came together 9 years after the servers closed, but they don't have any plans to relaunch the game though. On to the second Pokémon MMO, Pokémon Unova RPG Online, formerly named Pokémon Indigo. This one didn't require a download and was playable in a browser. It started development somewhere in the late 2000s and received a takedown notice in February 2024. So this incident is very recent at this point in time. There's honestly not a lot of information about the game itself and why it was targeted. I had to look at the videos that were made a decade ago to see how the game played. The game consisted of small maps directly taken from the 2D games, where you could see other players and catch Pokémon. On some of these maps, you could also battle gym leaders, up to the Unova ones. Since the takedown has been this recent, there's no news regarding a follow-up or anything similar. We're approaching the final entry of this video, Pokémon Evoas. Unlike the other fan games that I've discussed, Evoas was coded entirely from scratch. The developer, TH3 Shark, had many innovative ideas to reinvent the classic Pokémon formula. He has a post with details about each feature he wanted to implement, but Shark already managed to code quite a lot in the span of 9 months. There was a mode called Brink Mode, which was supposed to be a high risk-reward mechanic that allowed you to revive a Pokémon with a bit of HP, at the cost of it permanently dying if its HP reached 0 again. There were also combo moves, following Pokémon, no HM moves, more than 1 ability and more than 4 moves on each Pokémon, and so much more. After those 9 months of development, Shark received a call from a Nintendo representative, which is very interesting because other developers had to go through more, let's say, formal ways. No noteworthy events transpired after Nintendo's takedown request. Shark simply stopped development on Evoas and made a post on Reddit explaining this situation. These days, it seems Shark has gone off the grid. His Reddit account has been dormant for 6 years, and his Twitter or X account appears to have been deleted. Through his Reddit post history, I stumbled upon a post he made a decade ago, a few months after the shutdown of Evoas. In it, he hinted at working on not one, but 2 games. However, it doesn't seem like these projects ever saw the light of day. And there you have it. This was my deep dive into the history of fan-made Pokemon games and their wild encounters with Nintendo. Luckily, most of the games in this video have been preserved and are still playable to this day in some way. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you want more content like this. And leave a comment if you have anything to add to the discussion. Thank you for watching. Have a good one.